In the week 1 folder, we have PowerPoints, worksheets, and homework. So worksheets are things that I put together as extra help for you to use and look at. Some of them are like a digital link where you can review something, and I'm going to go to one of those in a little bit today. And then some of those are actually things you can fill out and keep as a study guide for the exam. Under homework, that is what's usually like 90% of the time for a grade. So today there's a worksheet for homework that's due tomorrow at 8 a.m. After we get done, you'll do that, and sometime today submit it, hopefully, before tomorrow at 8 a.m. for a grade. I won't have homework every day like that, so just to get you on track for the week. That one, I don't think I have any more planned for this week for a grade, so good news there. We'll start with 2 PowerPoints today we're going to go over. One is the history of x-rays, and one is about the lead shielding and the radiation safety part of it. So the chapter is super short, but we have broken it down into 2 presentations. So the first one, if you're wanting to download it, is the history of x-rays one. And then the other one is x-ray equipment. I'm going to share my screen so we can go over this history one together. It's a review somewhat of what we did with history of x-rays last month. A little bit of a delay on here. Is it going to let it be big? I don't know. Let's see. Let me stop how I share it maybe. All right, there we go. So here we got Mr. William Conrad Rankin again, that picture. It is not wanting to click to the next slide. So back in 1895, Rankin was working in his lab and discovered x-rays really by an accident. He was actually working with Crookes tubes and trying to see if it was going to produce a new energy or how it produced light. When he saw something else glowing in the room, and he was trying to determine what that was, what was causing that item to glow. So he started experimenting and researching and discovered this new unknown X-ray. That's what he called it. Some people wanted to call them Rankin rays at first. So basically the first X-ray tube is a cathode ray tube. The name of that tube is a Crookes tube. That was our first X-ray tube. Kind of like a weird looking light bulb. Inside of it has this little metal piece, and then over here has like a filament like what we have in today's light bulbs. The person who invented this is called Coolidge, is his name. Mr. Coolidge developed the first hot cathode tube in 1913. Inside that tube there's a filament end, just like in our light bulbs now, the little wire that lights up and glows and burns out when our lights go out. It's the filament of the bulb. And it's made out of this material called tungsten. It is the source of our electrons in our tube. This is where we get our electrons that are going to come over and produce x-rays for us. And the electrons are going to what we call bombard or crash into a target in the tube. So let me go back to that picture. This is our side of the light or the tube where the filament is, and over here is our target that the electrons are going to slam into. We're going to talk about this a lot more tomorrow in class. Trying to get Choco to behave. He doesn't like it that I locked him up. He's making all kinds of noises. So electrons are going to be created at the filament and hit into the target side. And this is all tomorrow, maybe not even tomorrow, a couple days. We're going to talk about this in detail, this process. So great improvements have been made over the years. We don't have this same tube design anymore. We've progressed, but the very first one was a hot cathode tube by Coolidge. That was our first X-ray tube. Here's another diagram of that process of what we're going to go over when we talk about the X-ray tube in a few days in our chapter. One side we have the filament, one side we have a target for the electrons, and then X-rays hit it and are being coming out of the target. That's what was happening in the lab that day, and X-rays were being made and coming over and hitting that material in the lab, causing it to glow. So they're still similar today as the Coolidge tube. So same type of design, just made some advances to it. So 1913, Coolidge developed the hot cathode tube. November 8th, 1895 was when Rinken was working in his lab with that Crookes tube. He put black cardboard all around it because he was trying to see if this glowing was happening from what he was doing when he turned his energy to that tube on. So the screen that was in the corner of his lab was coated in this material called barium platinum and what it did was glowed or fluoresced, that fancy word for light up or glow. So he knew that something was causing it to emit light, and he called those invisible rays coming out of the tube, because every time he turned the tube on it would glow. X-rays. X meaning unknown or mysterious. That was the X was the letter for unknown. So the first image that he took, and again, back then they called them Renkenograms instead of radiographs, was of his wife's hand. So we've had that a couple times on a quiz. After he researched in his lab for some time, he wrote a whole journal about his discovery. And when he was asked what did he think when he saw this discovery, he did not say, he said, "I did not think, I investigated." So once he did this investigation, he stayed in the lab night and day and worked on this journal that he published called the X-ray Journal. He identified 12 properties of X-rays, and they have not been changed ever since. So he was really thorough in his investigation. So these 12 properties you will see on a quiz again. I'm going to have you guys look real quick, do a Google search of what the 12 properties are, and then we'll just share them. You can talk out loud since our chat's not really working for everyone. So take a minute or so. Let me go yell at Chapo, and I will be back.
You can go ahead and start explaining, Sarah.
All right, Michael, I heard you. You found something, or did you just go to the next slide?
I found something.
What'd you find? Just name one so we can share with everybody. Naming one.
Well, the first one, radiation is capable of biologic and chemical changes by ionizing matter.
So ionizing matter, X-rays can ionize things. Terwala, you're up in my top corner. What do you got?
Highly penetrating.
Highly penetrating. X-rays can penetrate through a lot of different things. Sarah, what you got?
X-rays travel the speed of light, 186,000 miles per second.
Miss Dean will have you memorize that miles per second. There's also a formula. I will not. Just speed of light works good enough for me in this class. So when you get into the next physics class, you'll need to know that mile per second number. There's a ticket on Miss Dean's door if you ever go in her office that a student wrote her because she likes the speed. That was the speed she was going on her fake ticket they made for her. Kevin, you found one?
Sorry, I'm trying to wake up here. Let's see. Yes, I think I did. Guess it's capable of ionizing gases.
Okay, they're ionizing. Who said that one? Michael? Well, I don't know. Kevin, are you guys back or are you still visiting?
We're back. I got back at like 5, 6 this morning.
Oh, wow. Yes. Did you find something?
Found effects, photographic films? No?
It affects photographic film image. So that's how we used film, radiographic film in the beginning.
Okay.
Yep. Jessica, you got one? Are you still there?
It says travel in straight lines and diverges from the source.
Good. So x-rays don't bend. Like light, we can reflect it with a mirror. X-rays travel in straight lines. They continue in a straight line and they diverge from a source. That means that whenever they're coming out of the tube, they don't come out all in straight lines. They start to diverge out at an angle from its source. He got out.
What was that speed number again?
Your dog sounds like a pig.
He does. He's annoying me today. Chopo.
Oh.
He is like being quiet for a second and he does that on purpose. I thought usually when he does it, it's because he's hot or tired, but no, he makes himself do that. He's being annoying.
It sounds like a pig. I can't get over it. That's funny.
What was that speed number again?
186,000 miles per second.
I'm sorry, 100 and what?
86,000.
86,000 miles per second.
So that's the speed of light. Elizabeth, did you find one more?
I did. Not focused with the lens.
Not focused. So x-rays cannot be focused. We can't control where they go. What we have in our tube that you guys have already messed with is a collimator. Those lead shutters inside that box that you guys were messing with the dials, those lead shutters absorb the x-ray. So we're not focusing them to the finger or the part. We're just absorbing the ones that are around that area so they don't go through the patient. So we're not focusing x-rays when we're using the collimator. We're just getting rid of some of them because x-rays cannot be focused. We can take a light and focus it and things like that, but we can't focus x-rays. Megan, did you find any?
Yes. X-rays can't be seen, felt, tasted, or smelled.
Good. They're invisible. We can't see them. We don't feel them. People aren't going to be in the room getting shocked or anything when we're x-raying them. They're invisible and they can't be seen, felt, or heard. Now, what we hear in the room when we're doing an x-ray is spinning inside the tube sometimes, the little rotor motor moving, but we can hear the grid moving in our bucky, but we don't hear the x-rays coming out of the tube. We make sounds effects. Sometimes I have students do little sound effects for the x-ray exposure. Jonathan, did you find something? How many have we went through? About 8.
Let me see. I found X-rays produce secondary and scatter radiation.
Good, yes. So we'll talk more about that in this class, what's happening when that's going on. So they can cause other effects to happen. They we call those scattered x-rays or secondary x-rays. Ashley, did you find anything?
I am looking. I don't have the book yet, so I'm just trying to look through like the PowerPoints.
You can Google too.
I found a good thing on Quizlet. I don't know if it's in the book or whatever, but it's written out Rinkin rays.
That's what I'm fixing to
and
show you
that's
in PowerPoint.
yeah, and that's 12, and then
Yep.
each letter is a property.
Yeah. I think I found that on Pinterest somewhere. Somebody had designed that. Yep.
Okay, what do I type in?
Just 12 properties of x-rays. We'll come back, see if you can find something else that hadn't been said. We're almost to the end. Danielle, you got any?
Yes. Hello.
You're good.
Because I was trying to find that Quizlet one, but I found one on rtstudents.com, and it just kind of paraphrased everything. So it says heterogeneous. Heterogeneous.
That means they vary in energies. They're not just one energy level. X-rays are heterogeneous, many different energy levels. So we control the energy of our X-ray beam with our voltage, our kilovolts that we set on the control panel out there, one of those dial settings, and we're going to talk about that in the class sometime later in our class here. Eric, you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you find any?
I don't know if we said it. Can I be focused by a lens?
Yeah, they don't focus. Can't tell them where we want them to go, really. They go in that divergence and they're just going everywhere. Janelle, did you find any?
Did we say X-rays travel in straight lines?
Yeah, they did, but that's fine. Haley, did you find any different or something we already said? Probably gonna go to the next slide soon. Looks like we're.
Oh, I thought I was on mute. Sorry. Did we say they cause secondary and scattered radiation?
Secondary scatter, yep.
Oh.
I think we're running out. I think we're gonna get to the end. Let me move this big box out of my way so I can scroll to the next.
Did we say cannot be focused by lens?
Yeah, cannot focus them.
Okay.
So let's
X-rays are pure energy, no charge, and neutral.
Here's what Michael found. Neutral, yes. No charge. They are electronically neutral. So that's our E here. So radiation, Rinkin rays. This is the 12 properties, pretty much as Rinkin outlined them in his journal way back in 1895. I think he actually published it in 1896 because he discovered them pretty close to the end of the year. Radiation is capable of biological and chemical changes by ionizing matter. What ionizing means is to add or remove an electron, and that's a definition in the chapter, one of your bold words. The O only travels in straight lines, so X-rays don't curve or anything. They come out at a point and they go in a straight line, but they do diverge. So if they're coming out in this path of an angle from a center point, they come out at a fan, kind of, away from that center point. And when we draw X-rays, that's how we draw them coming out of the tube, a straight line in the middle, and then they diverge out from it. And we'll do that on the board tomorrow. Energies are heterogeneous. That means they have varying wavelengths and energies. And we're going to talk about that EM spectrum some more and the energies on it. They are not visible. They are highly penetrating. So we've got two things kind of in that one. They travel at the speed of light, 186,000 miles per second. Super, super fast. You push that button and that's where they're going at, speed of light, out of the tube, through the patient, through the wall, into the next room if there's not lead or something there to absorb it. Until they're totally absorbed by something, they're just straight line at the speed of light. Gases are ionized indirectly, so that's just a side note that other things can be ionized, that they are electronically neutral, they have no charge. They're not going to have a positive, negative attraction to anything. They're not focused with a lens. Radiations can produce secondary scatter radiation. They affect an X-ray image, so that's where they affect film. They yield a fluorescence, or they emit light. I don't think we said that one. And the last one we did not say was this one. Small amount of heat is produced from those interactions. Thank you. Got that on Holly. If anybody sees Holly message that she needs back in, let me know, because it might alert me, it might not. Never know on this. So those 12 properties you want to know. Sometimes I'll have those as a fill in the blank, name some of the properties or all of the properties. Rinkin spent weeks in his lab experimenting. It was noted in his journals he slept 8 in his lab, not making his wife very happy. And then he allowed her to be the first model and take that x-ray, that Rinkinogram of her hand. So when she saw it, and his wife's name was Bertha, she had to keep her hand there for about 15 minutes for the exposure. Thank goodness we don't have to do that anymore. Like half a second or less now for an x-ray of the hand. So we didn't know much about them. X-rays were coming in all directions. So it took a long time for him to get the x-ray to get penetrated through the hand and onto the plate. And this is not that x-ray. This is just an x-ray of a kid, it looks like. But here's the book picture. Someone has given this picture the credit as being the first x-ray image taken on December 22nd, 1895. So he had enough of his research done at that point. He felt confident he could pull her down into the lab and do this x-ray.
Were the levels of exposure the same back then as it is now?
No, way higher.
But for back then?
Yeah, I think so. Because they were exposing for a long time and they didn't shield or anything, people were getting exposed more.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I don't know how he died. Like, they got cancer or something.
Good question. We're going to talk about that in a minute. He had no desire to profit from it. He thought this was something that he should share with others in the community. He published his findings in January 1896. The title of it was A New Kind of Rays. He won the Nobel Prize in Physics. He was the very first award recipient of that award in 1901. So the very first Nobel Prize in Physics was to Rinkin for this discovery. He donated his money to the University of Würzburg in Germany. He filed for bankruptcy later in life and died a poor man. He died in 1923 from carcinoma of the intestines, but they did not believe that it was because of his work, because as soon as he was done that short amount of time with his investigations, he never worked with X-ray again. So he's a pioneer of the field. He used lead shields routinely because he didn't know what this was. And he knew by his experiments that thicker materials would absorb these X-rays and it wouldn't allow them to penetrate. In keeping with his will, all of his personal and scientific correspondence were destroyed upon his death. Isn't that crazy? I don't think that would happen today. So Mr. Coolidge, he was the one who invented the tube. So he was very interested in this new ray and what it could do. Lots of cartoons were coming out at that time period, some crazy stuff. They were science shows, stories. People were scared. Women were scared that people would be able to see through their clothes at the opera. All kinds of crazy stuff was going on in the time. They were marketing X-ray on everything, golf balls, shoe polish. They had this crazy thing here. It's a shoe fitter machine that people could walk by on the street, and the shoe salesman would have you take an X-ray of your foot and say, look, this shoe fits you perfectly. Kids would get pictures of their feet taken on their way home from the school or walking by. They'd put some money in there and they'd look through it and get their X-ray of their foot. Thomas Edison was very interested in X-rays too. He invented a lot of things, as we know. In 1896, he developed the first fluoroscope. I think this might still be in the chapter. They changed the chapter in the new book. He had this contraption that you put on, and it has the plate that glows inside of it. You could order this and have it sent to your house. And if you had a Crookes tube, you could look at your hand and see your hand moving in front of you, kind of like those little goggles, toys that kids put in with the little picture thing you hold up to the light and look. I can't think of what they're called, but you can get this fluorescent screen, the fluoroscope, to your home. The radiologist, when they use this to see inside people or anything, they would need to adjust their eyes to the dark so they could see better, to see through the fluoroscope. But the X-rays are coming straight through it at your face and eyes. So it didn't take long before some damaging effects were noticed that x-rays were dangerous. So the first documented death from x-ray exposure was Clarence Daly, Thomas Edison's assistant. So lucky for him, he got to be the assistant to Thomas Edison and was involved in all these experiments with the fluoroscope and lots of x-rays to him. Edison was so upset by this, he refused to work with x-rays anymore, but his assistant continued working with x-rays after Thomas Edison noticed that it was causing skin burns and different things. He didn't work with x-rays anymore, but Clarence Daly did continue on, and he died in 1904, and this ended the work from Edison's side. So safety questions were brought up, and now we have shielding. Here's some x-rays of radiodermatitis, skin burns. So this is why we do not ever put ourselves in the primary beam. We'll talk about that later. We don't put our hands or our body parts into the direct line of x-rays because of radiation burns, radiodermatitis. So shielding soon followed. So we have these lead shields like we have in the lab, the waist shields, and we have some rolling shields. I didn't realize I had this all together in this PowerPoint. I have a whole PowerPoint separate on this too. We have goggles that are leaded for our eye protection. We have a full body wraparound shield. We have gloves that are leaded to wear. These are the best, the two-piece lead, so you don't hurt your back. You have a vest and a skirt. We don't ever want to fold it. It should always be hanging on a rack. So we have those hanging racks in the lab. They have them at the hospital. They have rolling ones with arms coming off that can be moved around from room to room. So when we fold the lead, it can crack it and then let x-rays come through to the person wearing it. It's mandated that we test these yearly to check for cracks. And we have other types of lead, like the lead glasses that we would wear if you're doing lots and lots of fluoroscopy. Just for one case, you're probably not going to be wearing lead glasses. Not that it wouldn't hurt. It's just that these are kind of expensive, and usually only the doctors have their own personal pair unless you work in interventional radiology, and then they have a set that is shared for the techs and things like that. But as a general thing, in x-ray, we don't wear lead glasses all day long or anything like that. Lead gloves are also used for doctors when they perform injections. We have rolling lead on wheels that we use in the OR. We have the lead walls in our walls, and we have leaded glass that we look through in the lab. So you've seen the lead glass already. So normally, this didn't take us that long today. Usually takes me until almost lunchtime, and then we have a break, and then we come back and do the lead in the afternoon. But we'll just continue on and be done in a little bit. It's only 9 o'clock. So in the room, and I usually take you guys in the room and show you this. We'll do this if we can tomorrow. We'll go up in the room. 2 types of barriers, primary and secondary barriers. So a primary barrier is where the x-ray beam is going to be going through it straight. They need a little bit more lead in them, or lead equivalent, we call it. Secondary barriers are off the side walls, or maybe the floor is primary because it's going to be coming through it. So the side walls or the wall back towards us at the control panel, as long as the tube's not facing it. I know there's one room at one of the hospitals or clinic sites where they got the wall bucky facing the patient exposure area, which is crazy. But primary, secondaries are 2 types of barriers. Oh, anybody, who's our dramatic? Michael. Where are you? Want to read our x-ray poem? This was a poem written in 1897 that we found.
You want me to read it in English?
However you want to. You could do it with a British accent or whatever. Let's see what he can do here.
Okay. Exactly so. The rink and raise, where's the craze? The town's ablaze with this new phrase. I'm full of days, shock and amaze, for nowadays I hear they'll gaze. Throw cloak and gown and even stays those naughty, naughty Rinkin rays.
Yay, all right. So it does travel through gowns and jackets, cloak and gowns. That's the end of this one. Now the shielding one is my other presentation. Let's see if I can get to it. Stop share for a second. This computer. Skip some of the shielding that we've already went over. Still stuck on that one. Where's that one? All right, maybe. Good here. Any questions so far on that part of the stuff? That was kind of a review with a little bit more information on the discovery of X-rays. All right, so this is the X-ray equipment section of the chapter. Again, added some more important stuff for you. So we've already looked at the X-ray room, so this is also another little bit of a review. We have some more equipment besides what you've seen in the X-ray room. So here's a table set up with the tube. Here's a wall bucky set up, how it can go up and down on its track. We have a portable here, a little bit more sophisticated, high-tech than Wally, but they're even more high-tech than that. This is a GE portable that we used to love if we had this portable in the department. Now we have a digital portable that is like even better. So probably won't even see this one anymore too much. C-arms, this is what most C-arms are gonna look like. Has a monitor part, and then it has the tube part. This big part here shaped like a C, that's why we call it the C-arm. Has an intensifier up here that picks up the X-rays, has a tube down here that are shooting X-rays through, and then the patient's table is in the middle. It can be turned to go across the patient like a PA projection, or it can be this way if they're laying down, like an AP projection on the table. It can go across it again to go like a lateral on a hand or through the chest, depending on what we're trying to do. Usually spine, knee work, any kind of procedure in the OR operating room will be done with this. It has a cable that hooks up to the monitor section where you can take and fluoro and take your picture and save it over onto this monitor and then take another picture. So one side of it is to see what you've already done and one side is to see what you're doing now. It also usually has a little printer on here so you can print X-rays out on either laser paper or a film type, so depending on what they have. Has a keyboard where you can type in all the patient information and everything. So C-arm is going to be a little different depending on what system they have, but it all should be similar to this. Two parts with a C-shaped arm. There's also some that are instead of round, they're square or rectangular up here. Just depends on manufacturer. So we have diagnostic and therapeutic equipment. So diagnostic being stuff that we take to see what's going on with the patient, what's wrong, diagnosing them. Therapeutic is more for radiation therapy when you're given really high dose of radiation to kill a tumor or something. Our tables, we're gonna look at what material it's made out of. It's a special material, it's radiolucent, so it doesn't show up on x-rays. We have the bucky tray, we have it in the wall bucky and the table bucky. That's the tray that we pull out to put our image receptor in. We have grids, we're gonna talk about those. Grids are built into the bucky and there are also some that we can take and put under a patient if we go up into a portable. Some tubes are fixed and some will do the tilt and angle. Some buckies are also like that, wall buckies. And then ancillary equipment, some other equipment we're gonna look at. So for diagnostic equipment, these are going to be our x-ray rooms and how they're set up. So depending on what type of room it is and what we're using it for, specific procedures is going to be the type of equipment we put in that room. So most of our rooms are going to be for general diagnostic procedures. So they're going to be just similar to our lab, a table and a wall bucky. Sometimes they'll be digital, sometimes they'll be for computer technology, what are we called? CR, computed radiography plates to go in. So when we go back into the lab, this time we're going to actually take exposures on the digital room and our computer, hopefully the CR side. That computer's been down. I need to get somebody to fix it so I can hook up the CR system again. Interventional procedures or cardiac procedures are pretty similar. They're going to be using a C-arm for the most part to do them. Fluoroscopy is going to be a special fluoro table. Portable exams are going to be using the mobile. So depending on what we're doing will be the equipment we use. So different designs. Interventional suite is going to look very different than our diagnostic x-ray room. They're going to be using more similar to an OR setup. Therapeutic equipment is what we use to treat for cancer patients to get rid of tumors. It's going to operate at a much higher energy. We're going to be using milli electron volts instead of kilo electron volts. So millions of voltage versus thousands of voltage. So here's an example of some of the amps that we would use in X-ray. We use 10 to 1200 milliamps at 0.001 to 10 seconds, really 5 seconds is probably the most we use, and 25 to 150 kilovolts peak. So these are 150,000 volts or 250 volts. Usually we don't use this 25 volts unless we're doing mammography or something. But these are just energies that we're going to be talking about in this class. But just to give you an idea, therapeutic is 4 to 40 million electron volts, 1 to 60 minutes for our exposures, up to 20 milliamps for the heat part of it. So very different energies that we're working with. So generally we have the classification of our equipment can either be mobile, we can take it to the patient's room, or it's permanently installed, you have to bring the patient into that room. So mobile, pretty easy, it's on wheels, we can wheel it to the bed or the emergency room or the surgery area. A C-arm is a mobile type of unit. We can take it into the operating room and go into another operating room. The little portable machine is mobile. Permanently installed is fixed in place on the track. The patient has to be in the room there to do the x-ray. It's permanently fixed equipment. So for our fixed equipment, any question there? I thought I heard a quick click. We can have two different types of assemblies, mainly. There's really three, but tube mount or stand is like what we have in the labs. On this straight up and down assembly that rolls on a track, and that track is to the ceiling, and it goes along the table length. We can also turn the tube to the wall bucky. This one.
Are numbers up top there?
Huh?
Are numbers, are they up top there or no?
There are some numbers. I think that says 72 right there. I don't always see one that says 40. But this one is what you'll see in the hospitals, letter B. So this is an overhead assembly. We don't have any big track on the floor or anything that the tube's mounted on the floor. It's all mounted to the ceiling mount. And this whole thing telescopes out to go up and down for our height. And all these wires and stuff are kind of held up here and they're looped around in the back so that we have movement and they can come out and stretch for our distance that we need. So see how the wall bucky's over here? It's offset a little bit to the table side. So we're going to be having a couple different lock-in where we do that transverse lock to be centered with the table in the room. For the table bucky, we're going to have a transverse lock. And for the wall bucky, we're going to have a separate transverse lock that you would have to bring this tube across the track all the way over here somewhere to be centered to the wall bucky. So the locks, those detent locks that you hit the transverse button for, there's going to be two sets instead of just the one. Like this one has in the room that we have, just one lock. And it's matching up with the table and the wall bucky. So you'll be aware of that when you go to the hospital. So this is a versatile design. It can pretty much move anywhere in the room on this track. This track slides along the ceiling up here and across this way. So depending on the room size, you'll have big tracks for your tube to move. So the three configurations are floor mount. So it could just be hooked to the floor. I had a room like that. It was such a pain because you could not move the tube any direction besides up and down from the floor. the floor to ceiling wall mount, and then the overhead tube assembly. So the one we have in the room right now at the school is the floor to ceiling and floor wall mount. It tracks along the floor to the ceiling and the floor to the wall. If it was just floor mount, it would just be one stationary tube mounted to the floor that you can only go your height up and down. Overhead tube assembly is what most hospital rooms are going to have. That way you can move the tube anywhere in the room pretty much. If you're at an outpatient imaging center, an orthopedic center, they may have like what we have. I know there's one, at least one or two in Jacksonville that are just like our x-ray room. Students are like, oh, they had the same equipment we had at the school. They loved it because they didn't have to learn anything new. So here's one floor to ceiling mount and just floor mount. The floor to ceiling mount usually tracks along that track like we have in the room. So you can move it up and down the table and up and down for the height. Floor mounted is usually just for a wall bucky. It's just going to go straight up and down for the height for the wall. It's already mounted at the distance it's needed. Haven't seen very many that are like that. Ceiling support, here's another look at how the tracks go. You have a long track this way and a long track the length of the room, so you can move that tube. It also rotates about 180, but you usually don't want to keep doing that because you're going to get these wires wrapped around that. So at one point you're going to run out of wires and have to go back around the other way to undo it. So here's how all the wires are kind of wrapped up and stretch, a little bit of give with them. The table is our other piece of design. It needs to be somewhere positioned for the patient to easily be able to get on it. You have to have room for a stretcher to come into the room or a wheelchair. So you don't want it to be in the middle of the room. You want it to be off to the side somewhere. It's also good to have one that goes up and down in height. Ours does not. The four-way floating locks is so that you can move the patient around on it. When you step on the bar at the bottom of ours, it does that. These are electromagnetic locks. So it's little magnets and electricity kind of holding it in place when you let off the step. The tabletop should be radiolucent. We don't want the table to show up on our x-rays. The material that they use is called bakelite or carbon fiber. Pretty sure it's in the chapter 2 where it talks about the table material. Ours is flat. Straight, flat, hard table. Sometimes they're curved a little bit to make it a little more comfortable for the patient. We have a thin mat, doesn't help very much. I don't know if any of you have laid on the table yet. It's still pretty uncomfortable. It should be easily cleaned, scratch resistant, smooth. So it shouldn't absorb bacteria and things. It should be able to be wiped off pretty easily. Fixed and tilted. So ours is fixed. It doesn't tilt or raise up or down. A fluoro table, we want to be able to tilt and stand it up and then lay it flat. So it's two different types of movements for our tables, fixed or tilting tables. And then if we're tilting, we're going to need some kind of support at the bottom for our feet for the patient not to slide off the table, or shoulder supports at the top. So if we do head down, they don't slide off the back of the table the other way. See if I got a picture of that, maybe. Nope, I don't. Somewhere I have a picture of a floor table with the mounts and the foot mounts on them. So here's our bucky. You guys are already familiar with that. We have a table bucky and a wall bucky. Has some kind of handle on it for you to open it up. Put your cassette or your image receptor in there. You can put it in crosswise or lengthwise or portrait or landscape. Inside the bucky, you don't see it. I have to take the whole thing apart, but there is a grid inside of there. You already know the wall has a vertical rail up and down, so you can change the height of it depending on your patient. So you can slide up and down that rail depending on how tall where you need your bucky to be, or matching your patient. So upright exams, when they're standing erect or sitting in a chair, you can do them at the wall bucky. And then the last piece of equipment is the control panel. And you guys already know this because we looked at it last month. This is where you set your controls, the kilovoltage, the milliamps, That's what we use to produce our x-rays. So you're gonna know all of that by the end of this class. For now, just know that there are features on the control panel that we modify our exposure parameters depending on the body part that we're doing. So a hand is gonna be totally different than a chest x-ray on what we set. Primary factors, primary things we set. Milliamps, MA is the abbreviation for that. I'm going to talk a lot about MA this week. That is tube current, the quantity, that's how much current we're producing, tells us how many x-rays we're going to produce. Then we have the kilovoltage peak, which is the kVp, that's our initials for it. We're setting that kilovoltage to the peak or the maximum volts we're going to make our tube produce. That's the energy in the tube and the quality of our x-ray beam. These are all terms you're going to know really good by the end of the week. It also has some other things on there. The timer, there's seconds, S, little s for seconds. So MA for milliamps, seconds for the time. These two are going to go together for this thing we call mass, MAS. Has the button or the exposure switch that you're going to push. We have this line compensator on the one on the left with all the dials. We say, do not touch this on the line compensator. There's this thing called AEC. Our tube does not have AEC, but there is on the digital room. I'll show you the AEC stuff. We don't have AEC. That's considered automatic exposure control. We will talk about that in probably week 3 or 4 of this class. And there's a setting for what we call the focal spot. And that's other things on the control panel. So all of these little buttons and things we're going to look at individually, and you guys are going to know them inside and out just today. Know what's on the control panel, mostly these two over here, the primary things we set, milliamps and kilovoltage. Here's some more pictures of those portable units. So a different portable here than over here. This one's more similar to what we have, Wally, our little nickname for our portable. These are for patients that cannot be brought into the x-ray room or for traumas. If they're really, really sick, we're going to go do a portable x-ray on them. Then we have portable fluoro, which is the C-arm. It's a fluoroscopy machine. It does live dynamic imaging. We can see them moving and putting in the screws and everything. We can use these for our GI exams like our barium swallows, our barium enemas. We generally don't. We use the fluoro table in the x-ray room, not a C-arm, but you could. But in the OR is mostly where you're going to see these. So our role. We do sometimes push the button on fluoro, but only with a doctor present. So in the OR, we are the ones controlling the exposure. In fluoro, the GI tract, the esophagus, the BEs, the upper GIs, the doctor usually is doing the button. So a lot of these studies we're going to look at a little bit in this class. Hysterosalpingograms, angiograms, venograms, myelograms, diallogram, fistulogram, all of the ograms, meaning that we're taking pictures of some part of the body. We also use the C-arm in tube and line placements when they're putting in the PICC lines, the pacemakers, the NG tubes, so they can see what they're doing. We use C-arm in pain clinic to inject the needle into a joint or the nerves in the back. A lot of times we do these in spine for pain medication, numbing medication, so they put into the patients. And then, of course, the most common is the operating room. Here's our big thing, a LARA, A-L-A-R-A, as low as reasonably achievable. So to get that, we want always our exposure to the patient or us as low as reasonably achievable. And we do that by 3 things, time, distance, and shielding. I always say it like that, time, distance, shielding, but one class remembered it in a little bit different way, and they said STD. So if you want to remember it by STDs, you would say it in a different order than me, because I say time, distance, and shielding always. So we want the least amount of time of our exposure, the most distance we can get away from it for us, and the most shielding that we can have. And these things protect the patient, the radiographer, the radiologist in the room, or anybody else if they have a family member, a baby, getting a fluoro procedure. Sometimes we let the mom come in and hold or something. So anyone else, nurses or someone else that might be in the room. We use that for everyone because we're the #1 controller and knowledge person for radiation safety. Doctors and everybody else doesn't get a lot of training on the effects of radiation in their school. So patients and scatter. We talked about radiation's primary factors that they can cause scatter. So when x-rays are coming through the patient, things are happening, interactions are happening. We call these x-rays that are coming out of the patient scattered radiation. Scatter is bad. Scatter is coming from our primary beam out of the tube, out of the patient as the x-rays are going through it. So that's where we're gonna get dosed. If we're standing by a patient, we're gonna get scattered radiation. We don't put our hand or our body in the primary beam coming out of the tube, but our exposure is gonna be from this secondary or scattered radiation. So that's why if we can get further away and wear some lead shielding, we're not gonna get any scatter radiation, hopefully. Up here in this picture, there's having some leakage coming out of the tube because remember, x-rays are coming in all directions out of the tube. We're going to talk more about leakage radiation, scatter radiation, primary useful beam, secondary beam a lot. So you don't need to know all of this right now. Main thing is our ALARA is time, distance, and shielding. And who does it protect? The patient, the radiographer, the radiologist, or anyone else in the vicinity of the x-ray. So that's why we have people leave the room.
What was the ALARA again? I'm sorry.
As low as reasonably achievable. That's what it stands for. Here's some prices I just Googled real quick just to show you, depending on where you're buying it from. I don't know if I've ever seen lead for $78. Don't look like it's very high quality, but different types of lead shielding, the rolling leads. I don't know what this is, but thyroid shields cover the thyroid. Big lead wall with a little window. We did have a radiologist, an OR doctor that would stand behind that. Before we could push the button, he would go hide. Here's what we had in one of the rooms, a big divider with a leaded window. Lead shield on the back of a patient down here, a little waist apron. So we have thyroid shields, waist, full body, the rolling lead gonadal shielding. I didn't have a lot of pictures of that, but that's what these little ones are. We have some on top of the filing cabinet in the lab. Shadow or contact shields, which are these shadows. They cast shadows. This hooks to the collimator. And these big white spots are those little squares right here. They're covering the whole spine. These big circles, I would think these look like Mickey Mouse ear symbol. These are these little tiny dots. They show up big on the patient because they're on the collimator and they project and block the radiation on the patient. For this spine exam, a scoliosis exam is what that is. And then here's the big one here covering the breast on this lateral image of the spine. She's got weird curve of her spine. Pretty straight on the front picture. But shadow shields cast a shadow of lead and get rid and block the radiation out for it. And then our last little section, I'm pretty sure this is our last section, is our radiation dosimeters, our monitors. So some names for them are film badges, TLD, thermoluminescence dosimeters, and OSL, optically stimulated luminescence dosimeters. I think we have OSL, used to be TLDs, but I think we've progressed and OSL is what we're using now. That is how the people who we send these to in the lab put it into some piece of equipment to get our dose off of it. Film badges were very old way of doing it. It was a little piece of film inside there, and they would take it and process it and see how much exposure the film had to see how much exposure we got. That was way back in the 1940s. It had film in there and metal filters. and you had to wear it facing the right way to the front. It was a very cheap way of monitoring, but we've come a long way, and they invented TLDs, which is a chip with a powder that absorbs the X-ray energy. It's more accurate than the film, but it's very expensive, and you could wear them for up to a year. So yeah, that's not what we have. We have OSL, I have it right here. So they're a little more sensitive than the TLDs, and we send them off every quarter. Every 4 months, you'll get a new dosimeter. So you'll wear it for 4 months. In that 4-month time, you may or may not be at clinic. So for right now, it's your first 4 classes. You're not going to be in clinic. You should not have a reading on these dosimeters when I send them off. The next set of dosimeters that we'll give you, you would hopefully have been in clinic a little bit. Some of you maybe will start your clinicals after those first 2 classes. You'll have 2 months of clinic. So then when I send those off, we'll see if you got any exposure when you were out at clinic. So you're going to wear these dosimeters outside of your lead at close to the thyroid level. So here's where we wear it. So if you're going in on a fluoroscopy procedure and you're all leaded up, you just clip your little film badge to the thyroid shield outside your lead, because we want to see what potential exposure you got during that procedure. If you wear it under the lead, you're protecting it and you're not going to have any exposure. Now, you don't want to leave it on the lead after you take your lead off and you forget about it and leave it in the room, because then it's going to get exposure all day long while it's just sitting there, possibly. So you want to make sure you keep up with it. There is finger dosimeters. I know this picture's small, that people wear in nuke med. I talked about the nuke med technologists inject in radioactive materials, so they get a finger dosimeter to see if their hands are getting radiation. We also have a pregnancy dosimeter that's where close to the baby at waist level, on the underside of the lead, because now we do want to make sure we're protecting the baby. If you have pregnancy, we'll talk about that with you. But different places to wear your dosimeter or your monitor, depending on what work you're doing. And this is in the front of the book and in the chapter. It goes into depth in the chapter. I'm not making you do any math and conversions. If you've read the chapter and saw all that, you can just X that area out, skip that section. In the book front, there should be a chart with exposures. It's like a little thing right up here, radiation units. It just describes them a little different than your other physics book is. So this chart we made for you guys. I know this was not in the PowerPoint I had downloaded, so I'm going to put this picture by itself in the discussion board for you guys to have today. So let's talk about it. So we have SI units, which are what we're supposed to be going to now on the registry. Before, we would use the regular unit, because us in America, we have to be different from every other country. But now they've decided with the registry, just the past time they updated the registry, to be only testing the SI units. So that's what I have here. So we used to call them Rinkins, Rads, Rims, and Curies. I'm still like in that mindset, because that's what I'm so used to calling it all these years. But we're supposed to be all on board and doing the international unit, the SI unit, which is coulombs per kilogram, gray again, sievert, and sieverts. So Ms. Dean put this together to explain the differences in how it measures to you. The symbol or the abbreviation, I'm pretty sure that the dosimetry reports are still coming back in rads, though. They haven't changed it or updated it. But absorbed dose is how much the radiation was absorbed in the patient or the item, whatever we're measuring. This is going to be a good indicator of how much biological effect it had. So we measure that in grays. Now for the biological effect, we got to have that, and then we will take and put it into a formula and measure it out for how much dose was to the tissue. And that's millisieverts. So for the biological effects, where the tissue is, the energy deposited is the absorbed dose or the gray. The effective dose, and that's what our reports, our monitors are going to be coming back in, are the sieverts or millisieverts, MSV. So when we get our calculation back on how much we received radiation-wise, it's going to be sieverts, which I'm pretty sure they haven't totally switched over that terminology, and they still call it REM. But air camera and exposure, these are going to be from radiation spills and things like that that we would measure with the little Geiger counters, coulombs per kilogram. And we're not going to use this one too much for us. This is the main slide I want you to know, that we have a limit, and it used to be REM, radiation equivalent man, or radiation absorbed dose we would use to calculate that. But 5 REM or 50 millisieverts per year. I used to have to make you convert it. I'm not doing the math on this one. Maybe later on in the program before you graduate, Miss Steltz or Miss Dean will have a class on these conversions, just in case you get one on the registry that they didn't have it in the right term and you need to know how to convert. So we don't need to worry about that right now. Just before you go take the registry, we'll go over that with you, how to convert it, but it's not needed for today in this early part of the program. So for your test purposes, we're going to test you on millisieverts or sieverts, because that's what the registry said they're going to test you on. They've done away with REM and rads. So your number, the magic number you need to know, is 50 millisieverts. So you know where to wear it, close to the thyroid somewhere, at the front of your lead area at the chest level, outside or above the apron. I don't know why they put above the apron. So closer to thyroid, never under the lead, 50 millisievert dose per year. Fetal monitors, if you're a pregnant worker, is going to be under the lead, and that's not mandatory to have that. And only if you want it. It's a voluntary thing that you have to declare. So again, reviewing the barriers, they're going to protect us from having, if somebody's x-ray room is here and the next door they're doing patient care, the primary barrier is going to protect that person in the next room getting hit with x-rays through the wall. So a primary barrier is going to be in front of the tube where the beam is directly pointing at it. So to be lead equivalent, we don't have to use lead. We could use drywall, wood, paneling, concrete to equal lead. So they say lead equivalent for primary beam, and you're going to learn all of these amounts, how much thickness it has to be later on in the program. So we're not teaching you all of that now. We're just telling you what a primary barrier is now. Secondary barrier is to protect that scattered radiation from the tube or the patient. So those are going to be off to the side. They're not as thick as primary because the beam's not coming straight at them. We also have in that tube, as you could see when you're in the room, that tube is kind of a piece of metal around it. It's a lead tube that helps get rid of that leakage radiation coming out of the tube housing when we're taking x-rays in the room. So scatter is controlled by different things. It could be lead glass, steel, wood, this gypsum board material in the walls. The control booth, the walls, and the doors, as long as they're not in the primary beam, they're secondary barriers. So again, we're going to look at that in the lab tomorrow, hopefully, and the lead shielding that we have. So today's homework, you're going to go over Chapter 2 on your own and review it. We do not go over Chapter 2 in the book. That is an atom and biology chapter. I have a little thing I made for you on what you need to know. We'll look at tomorrow. We'll look at it together. If you want to look at it tonight, you can. But Chapter 3 is our chapter that we're learning tomorrow. So just look through this link on Chapter 2 as an overview of what you need to know about an atom. What's in the nucleus? The rings around it, the electron shells. That's pretty much it. We're not going to talk about interactions and bonds and covalent bonds or any of that that's in Chapter 2, just the atom. And then see Blackboard, we have a folder today for homework assignment that you will have your first homework grade. Let me stop sharing. Somebody said that looked intimidating. Hopefully it's not too bad. Do your best and we'll review it tomorrow. At the end of the chapter, there are questions you can do for review too that'll help you for the quiz. If it's something I said we don't need to know, I know there's a question about converting SI units, just skip it. Because not all those questions are what we're gonna ask and what I feel is important for you guys right now. So that is it for today. Any questions so far? Yes, Jess.
Rank and raise where I had like the information, was that in the PowerPoint when it, you know, like his name was down and then that's in the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay.
The only slide that I added after I downloaded this straight from the PowerPoint today was that SI unit slide, but I don't really like that slide. When I was reading over it now, I don't think I want y'all to have to know that. That's a little confusing, that word's on it. The only thing you really need to know is the dose 50 millisieverts. Yeah. You'll get into all that in the next physics class, all the different terms and what they measure. All right, guys, have a good day. I will see you guys at 8 on campus. What?
Just to clarify, so for the homework, we're outlining the objectives, making a multiple choice question for each objective that's in like the master syllabus for this entire course, or?
Read over a second here. I think I have them, it's not letting me, posted in today on week 1. So those are not the entire course, no.
And then we're
letting me see it. Let's see, homework for today. That's just the folder. It's not letting me see the assignment. Hold on. I don't know why. It's like got me in edit mode right now. It's downloading the document. I think it's just making
an outline of this chapter.
Yeah, an outline of the chapter. Now I'm trying to think about the objectives because I might need to put those there for you because the objectives I have right now on week 1 are for the whole week, not just today. So that's what I'm looking at to see what it says.
Well,
exactly.
The book and the beginning of it has objectives, like chapter 1 objectives. There's like 6 of them.
When I not from the book, sorry. When I downloaded it, I see it. So there's 11 things here that I have on the assignment. So when you download that, outline these objectives down here and 1 question for each one. That's what I'm talking about, these 11 things. I'm fixing to share the screen. So not the whole objectives from the course syllabus. That would be too much. That would be the whole class. So here's the objectives right here, 11 objectives. These are the ones I pulled from the syllabus that you want to make a question about and kind of know that you know these things. This will help you for your exam on Friday and for your quiz tomorrow. So describing the tables, the types of tube stands, the purpose of the upright wall bucky, 2 major types of mobile systems, C-arm, and then a mobile X-ray machine. Cardinal rules of radiation protection, ALARA, what we talked about with that. You can use that PowerPoint to go through each of these. Understand the primary and secondary barriers. Fluoro, limits of exposure for occupational workers are millisieverts. The various methods used to protect the patient. What do we do? Time distance shielding. Various devices used to detect and measure radiation. That's our detector, our monitors, our TLD, OSL, film badges. What's the purpose of monitoring? What do you think that would be? Just to make sure we're not getting too much radiation. Units measure radiation exposure.
So the homework is make a new document and then make a question for make up a random question for number 1, number 2, number 3, yes. And it has to pertain to that.
To that, exactly. And then outline the objectives, just kind of taking these objectives, making your own study guide or outline, however you want to call that for yourself. There is an outline feature in PowerPoint. Some people use that. Some people do the old school Roman numeral 1 in the subject matter and then ABC, depending on how you want to outline your chapter. I just gave you this as a good start for make sure you can have a way to study each section after we're done. I'm not going to give you this every time as an assignment though, but if it helps you to study for the exam at the end of the week, I will definitely still give you those objectives for the day. I already got them listed for the week on Blackboard.
Is that outline that we make submitted with those questions, or?
Yep, all on one thing. You can just, this is our week objectives.
And this is all over chapter 1?
Yep, all of that, those 11 things are chapter 1, what we went over today. So really, we don't have much more off of our units for the week. Oh man, it still says REM here, but CVER's on there. We're going to talk about more of the EM spectrum tomorrow. I think we're going to talk about these line focus principles, space charge effect, anode hill effect tomorrow. And then tube interactions and stuff will be on Wednesday and Thursday. So we did almost all the objectives today, pretty close to all of them.
Random question, where can I find the list of vaccinations that we need?
So that is going to be from Miss Stelz. Who asked that?
Elizabeth.
It should be in that main.
Is it in the handbook?
Yeah, it's where it's got the skeleton dancing, and we write our name. It's that in that big packet that the orientation packet. And that page.
Everywhere. You
I
can't
think
find
so.
I wanted to ask Megan to email Miss Stelz. Do you have her info? So she can give you all that, because it's due for them October 24th, I think you said, or something like that. Yours will probably be the same. Did she give you that already?
23rd.
The 23rd. Did Miss Stelz already give you that last time or anything for shots?
The list of shots?
Mm-hmm.
I have a list of all my shots on this like yellow thing they give your parent when you're a baby. Can I copy that? Or, I mean,
I think I need you to get with Miss Stelz. Okay. I'll give you her email and I'll message you that today so she can send you everything she needs from you, because they've kind of had a head start.
Love, if they get on to on Blackboard and you go to organizations and it says medical, clinical, and you go to the left and radiology, she has a whole folder created for the clinical requirements.
Okay.
And what they showed us in orientation. Elizabeth, you want to get on that?
Yeah, that will have all of that. That's another option. Good question. Good deal. But I definitely think you need her contact info too, so you can get with her if you have any questions on shot stuff, because there's a lot you got to do. Flu shots were due last week, so if you have a flu shot, go ahead and email that to her if you have not already done that. And then again, if you need to get it, still do that ASAP for the flu shot for this year, this season flu. So you can go to clinic when it's time. All right, see you at 8 a.m. room 213 tomorrow, or I guess I'll see you up front first, check you in. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
And I'm trying. Let me stop recording.